going to talk about, we're into respiration. Some have had labs, so we've done it already. So you've looked at it, kitty cat, plastic bottles, the sheep plug. Plug means you have this, and a half. That's your plug. So here we go. Well, first area we go to, we're going to go to the pharynx area to get there. So we're going to start with the conducting region of the lung fields first, then we get into the respiratory fields. So we'll work our way through it. And you can see this is the whole respiratory system. You pretty much, they highlight the nasal cavity or nasal pharynx. You've got to travel to the oral and laryngeal pharynx, and we finally get into our trachea, and we work our way into our bronchi, lungs, and there we are. And of course, there's other things involved with it, such as the diaphragm, and so forth. So that's just the basic overview. And here's a happy person showing you nose and stuff. Well, let's go to this one first. You do have a half head in the lab, and when we went over the pharynx areas, you don't include this part when you're talking about pharynx. This would be the cavities, which include the pharynx. I know it's screwed, but the pharynx is just the connecting tube. So we need the connecting tube, and the main one that you should really breathe through is your nose, not your mouth. Even though we can breathe through our mouth instead, you're supposed to breathe through your nose. It's a healthier way to breathe. So we have nasal pharynx. So nasal pharynx is run from what they call the posterior nares. So this would be the anterior nares and the posterior nares. And it stops around the top of the soft palate. Soft palate. So it runs from posterior nares to soft palate. That's your nasal pharynx. So when you laugh, there would be a sticky there, you'd say nasal pharynx. If a sticky would be here, you'd say oral pharynx. So the oral pharynx runs from soft palate to top of hyoid bone. And laryngeal pharynx from hyoid bone to the top of the larynx, which is this, larynx and esophagus. All right? So there's your pharynx, your pharyngeal regions. So pharynx just means connecting with. So that's the pharynx. So now we're going to get into the cavities next. So we're not going to put a lot of emphasis in oral cavity this time, but we will talk about the tongue and stuff like that. The glandular stuff we'll get into with digestion in the next upcoming lectures. Okay?
Real quick, posterior nares, soft palate,
Hyoid to the top of the larynx. And then with the larynx is that whole area which is the glottis. Okay. So here we go. So when we get into the nasal, first of all, we have a septum in there, right? We have a superior, middle, inferior conchae, and the folds would be known as the meatus. So the conchae is the bony ridge, the folds of the tissue over it be known as meatus. Same thing. And we're going to learn that up in this area here, we have olfactory mucosa or olfactory epithelium versus respiratory mucosa or respiratory epithelium. What would be the difference between the two?
Completely different nerves.
The answer I'm looking for.
The types of tissue.
We're talking about the tissue. Not different types of tissue. Not nerves. No, you're an idiot. Whatever the idiot was right, you get picked on. But still, right? This is David answering the question, so I got to bother David. Well, the bottom line is one is designed for sense of smell, the other one's designed, so your olfactory is designed for sense of smell. That's its job. It's a specific type of tissue that has receptors in there for sense of smell. The other tissue, which would be from this point down, all the way from here, is designed for respiration, meaning to filter the air, warm the air, moisten the air. How's it filter? Well, it's mucousy. It grabs stuff. There's hairs in there too that hang out the stuff. It warms the air because a lot of blood supply. Moistens the air because it's mucousy. It's damp. So the air is moist when it hits your lungs.
That's so you don't go into shock when you breathe in cold air.
Right. It's cold air, will just close all the smooth muscles right down. So you have a hard time breathing if you're running in real cold air. It's like your nose is sticking together. because it's thickening itself up, because it's bringing more blood supply in to warm the air, so it's tough on it. I mean, what happens when it dries? When you go in there, that's how you make a booger. Right? What's a booger? Dust, dirt, sometimes a hair, right? And dry mucus, that's what it is. So those would be your respiratory mucosa. So you got two types in there. Then we have a septum. Well, we know the septum is made from bone. What four bones create our nasal septum? Yeah. Well, how about the perpendicular plane of ethmoid first, that I would use, because that's the biggest one coming in. Then not the sphenoid, then the ethmoid, then maxillary and palatine. Those four all unite together to form the septum. So maxillary, palatine, vomer, and perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. Those four bones fuse together and they wall all this off to become your septum. Also, we have hyaline cartilage in the anterior part where you can wiggle your nose around. So that's all the bony structure that's creating most of this cavity, okay? Especially the septum.
So for your respiratory mucosa, you would just classify that as the middle and inferior nasal concha?
Yeah.
Or would you include the meatus as well?
Yeah, the meatus would be there because that's the fold of tissue. The meatus is the true tissue. The concha is the bony ridge. So the meatus is the lie over the.
But in response to the moistening, warming.
I'd go to the meatus, yes, because it's tissue. Then we find another thing back here, a hole. And what is that? It's called the pharyngeal tympanic tube, or known as eustachian tube, which most of you probably know it as. Or auditory tube, if we really go back in the day. Eustachian tube, auditory tube, or the new name now, pharyngeal tympanic tube. So it's a tube or a connecting route that goes right behind your tympanic membrane, which is your eardrum. And it connects this nasal area to the inner ear. Why?
Drainage?
Everybody loves drainage.
They do.
In theory, should there be a fluid level in that inner ear? The answer is no.
Because it goes bacterial.
Right. So yes, drainage is one, but that's not its prime reason why it's there. What happens when you're on a plane? It blows. Right?
There's a pressure.
Ah, so it regulates pressure between the inner ear and the nasal region. It regulates the pressure, so you don't explode out your tympanic membrane.
Auditory hole.
When you get tubes put in your ears, is it because that's not full?
Exactly. They put it in there to keep it open. What happens in a lot of children is, you see this thing is angling up? Well, all this is developing in them. The canal, instead of being pitched down, might be pitched level. So when they shove the tubes in there, the tympano-pharyngeal tubes in there, it pushes it down. It keeps it angled down. So it develops down and keeps it open so drainage will take place so they don't get, tinnitus media constantly. Because they get that all the time. If they get it more than 3 to 6 times in a year, they're going to place tubes in the air. Okay? So that's why it's there. That's the and you can, that's really tell you swallow, chew on a plane when it's taking off, as it's pressurizing itself, because the pressure is building up in there. As you're swallowing and chewing, you're stretching that canal out, and it'll keep it open. Because you're keeping it moving instead of letting it collapse. Then you're gonna, because then you're like, ooh, it's bumping here, and it'll pop, you hear again. Because it opened up.
How do you pronounce that again?
What?
The pharyngotympanic.
Oh, eustachian. I'm sure you've heard the term eustachian, auditory too. That's the
What are you
term.
gonna?
All three, maybe. All three. No. Just to be difficult.
Yeah.
Just to be difficult. And make it in true and false fashion. Just to
Your
nail it.
rate my professor scores
It's going to go down.
It's going down.
You're going down.
Your rate my professor scores dropping.
What else do we have in there, David? A pharyngeal tonsil. What is tonsillar tissue? What is it similar to? Yes, I am. Oh.
Good. Oh, what do you call that thing? It's similar to the, not uvula. No, what is it? Wrong cavity. I can't think how it's escaping me.
And they're hearing you on it.
I know, that's okay.
All your fans can hear you.
My fans.
Exactly, lymphoid tissue, exactly, 100%.
Oh, I'm thinking.
So what's it related to? Immune system. It's there for a reason to keep stuff from going beyond that point.
I misunderstood your question, sir.
And what's another name for it?
Tonsils.
No. This is tonsils. Adenoids. Adenoids.
That explains a lot.
Eight, no? Adenoids? Yeah. You've heard adenoids, right? I live in a bubble. Oh my God, adenoids. Adenoids, right? So when you take out, so when they remove it, what is it called? Adenoidectomy. So in an adenoidectomy, which tonsils removed?
Oh, the pharyngeal
Thank you,
tonsils.
the pharyngeal tonsils. So now we can ask you that on a test. How do you know? Yeah, adenoids. What's going to be I don't know, I didn't invent this. Go talk to your nose and throat doctor, ask them. It wasn't my specialty, ENT, so you can ask them.
They told me I needed those, they didn't say pharyngeal tonsils.
Because they wouldn't, you would say, what the hell are you talking about? My tonsils are missing. Not that one, stupid, this one.
Nasal tonsils.
That's right, they're nasal tonsils, exactly. That's what would be easy to call, instead of adenoids going. And usually the person talks funny when they're too swollen, because they're constantly swollen, they're going to bother this, they're going to bother airways, so they take them out, the adenoids.
If you have like,
Yes.
It's contagious.
do you have like chronic sinusitis?
Sinusitis.
That's when they would take that out?
They might, depending if that's the other problem. You gotta remember, they do their job well, but what happens with these tonsil tissues, they become a perfect haven for baby hemolytic strep to live in. That's the problem. So that's why they like to get rid of them if you constantly keep getting repeated infections. Most of the time it will be strep.
Well, once they get rid of them, isn't that just another barrier taken down?
Yes, it is, but the strep will be gone.
Did they take all of them or just that one?
They'll take those two only if they need to. There's one on each side. You know, there's one on each side. Well, yeah, we'll worry about these in a second. We're not there yet, so you relax over there.
You're feisty today.
I'm very feisty. I'm very feisty.
I can't learn these hot
She can't learn. Wait till we have God stand here with guns. Student asks a question. Anyone? Oh. Damn, I'm the first one gone.
Stop the wave.
So that takes care of our nasal region. Okay? So now we go into the oral cavity. That's cavity there is. A lot of oral cancer lately. You see where that's coming from? Papillomavirus. Too much nasty stuff. But it's true, that's Michael Douglas, cancer came back, and his causes was definitely linked to oral sex, and created his cancer in his throat. There was a whole segment done on Dr. Oz the other day about that, where it's bad, dangerous,
Wait, what?
Oral sex.
Oral sex is dangerous.
because there's a high rate of human papillomavirus, high rate of throat cancer.
Can I put Kenny Love in his danger zone right now?
So we look inside the mouth. First of all, we have a nice big tongue in there. Tongue is all muscle. What three muscles control the tongue for movement? Well, you got styloglossus,
Excuse me.
hyloglossus, and genioglossus. They all have glosses. So styloglossus, what do you think it originates off? Styloglossus. Styloid process. Back here.
This last one?
I didn't finish. Styloglossus, then genio. So styloglossus is going to originate where? Off the styloid. That's responsibility of that is to wiggle the tongue side to side. Okay? Then you have genioglossus. Well, the genioglossus originates off the base or down deep inside here, off the mandible. So when this contracts, it'll push the tongue out. And the hyaloglossus originates off hyoid bone, which will depress the tongue and help retract it back in. So those are the six of them, there's three on each side, that control the tongue. What nerve innervates them?
Has glasses in it.
I have glosses.
There you go, thank you, see? Hypoglossal nerve, right, one has a glossal nerve, which also have a glossal pharyngeal. You can't win. You just can't win with this guy. He's so rotten. But there you go. So those are your three muscles that control your tongue, and you got intrinsic muscles. So tongue is all muscle. A lot of people like to eat that. They say it's the most, David Zimmerman says the most tastiest meat you can eat is the tongue. Then I had students showing me last night, tongue being split open. People have a snake tongue, they have their tongue sliced. And they don't suture it, they don't do anything. And they have no anesthetic, nothing. It's cut right through the middle.
I had a friend that did it.
Yeah. How come you did?
Because my tongue works just fine.
We also have teeth in our mouth, right, in the oral cavity. How many in the adult? 32. In the child, 20. 20 in the child, 32 in the adult. What's the gum's proper name? What's the proper name for gum? What's gum disease called? All right, so what's the proper name for gum? Gingiva. Not Genevieve, gingiva. So the gingiva is the gum. What's the part above the gum line known as on the tooth? The crown. And the part below it? The root. And what is the tooth covered with? Enamel, which is the hardest known substance in the human body, is enamel. It doesn't even burn when you cremate something. Still, it survives. You have to crush it. If you stick your hands in the cremains, pull up, sometimes you'll have a tooth in your hand. Because the tooth doesn't burn. The enamel is so strong. So it's the hardest substance known in the body. Is enamel, that the body produces. So that's all there. And then we come back here, we have the roof of this cavity is the palate, right? So we have the hard palate, which is made of two bones. What are they? Maxillary and what?
Palatine.
Palatine, thank you. Maxillary and palatine. The back, we have the soft palate, which is stylopharyngeus muscle, primarily. And we have back here a gland, another type of lymphoid tissue, which is palatine tonsil. That's the one that's removed in the tonsillectomy, is the palatine. And the last but not least there, we have the uvula. And again, what is the job of the uvula?
To close off the nasal pharynx.
Exactly. It closes off the nasal pharynx when you swallow. Does it work well? So it makes you laugh.
Yeah.
No, comes out your nose. That's a shame. Waste of beer.
Here. Full name jacket.
It's a waste of beer when it comes out of your nose. It's supposed to go down. You just become a big beer filter anyway. So he wants to see what pops. That's it. How's he going to the bathroom? So you understand, so you get the tongue, you have three muscles that control your tongue. What we're not mentioning here also would be salivary glands. We'll do that with the GI system, because they relate more to digestion and breathing.
Bless
So you can breathe through your mouth and you eat through your mouth. Okay, so the oral cavity has two functions, breathing and ingestion of food. Somebody have a question? I got a question. Let's play that back. Someone said question.
Bless you. I'll ask it.
No? They said bless you?
Yeah.
Oh. That's why Ed comes. He straightens out my lectures for me.
Yeah, I know it's on the GI, but salivary glands, are they accessory?
Yeah.
Or are they?
No, they're not sensitive. You were sensitive. So that takes care about oral cavity. So you can see between here and here, we have a defense mechanism to protect this region. We also have another tonsil down here known as lingual tonsil, which sits down behind your tongue. So these all form a barrier to prevent infection from going down here into your lungs. So what you find when you've had the adenoids and or palatine tonsils removed, bronchitis has increased at first, because everything goes right into the lung. So you don't get the chronic sore throat anymore, or you do in the last maybe day, oh, I'm better. Only it's like 2 days after that, you have trouble breathing, you're coughing up phlegm, it's all in your lung now, removed. So you know, trade off one for the other. But the problem is this thing can get so big and swollen, it can actually choke the person, especially the tonsils here. You actually can get what they call kissing tonsils. They're so big, they're like 2 big meatballs touching one another. They're so inflamed. So years ago, they would paint them with stronger astringents, such as saline in water, and it would shrivel the tonsil right up. Or they'd go in and grab the tonsil and squeeze it and take all the waste out of it, and then make the person gargle with salt water on the hour. That's how they treated this stuff before, you know, antibiotic and not removing them. Now, they were, years ago, removing them when I was a kid, it was done right in the doctor's office. Went there, and out they came. Older sister was done on my grandmother's dining room table on a Sunday morning. You know, now we've made it, whoa, we're going to go to surgery centers, we're here and there, and things. And guess who did it? It was the family doctor did it. On his house coat, gave him his little bag and took the tonsils out.
Yeah, but wasn't there like a lot of deaths due to that back in the day?
Yeah, really. It's called population. We don't have that anymore. I'm not lying. So where do we go from here? Now we go to the larynx. We're looking at it from the outside, you know, so you have your hyoid bone about here, and on CSI, that's an important thing, because if it's cracked, it's usually strangled with that first, right? Because you crack the hyoid bone.
Unless I hang it,
Yes.
because of body, what's the higher point of crack?
But hanging is not supposed to strangulate, it's supposed to break the neck if it's done properly. It's done wrong when the person strangles. And the thing is, you grab the person, you grab the person, and jerk them, so you snap the neck and so they don't suffer. So the pirates did. So then the Larynx goes up. That's right, pirates. I want to be a pirate. Arr.
All the scurvy.
And then we have the Adam's apple. Yeah, scurvy, right, vitamin C deficiency. What is the Adam's apple? It's pretty much your thyroid cartilage, more prominent in the male than the female, right? Sometimes. David wants to have, you know, a friend. Everybody is very prominent.
Everybody has a whoopsie moment.
He didn't realize he was a she sometimes. He didn't know that. And so, and that's showing you where your cricoid would be. And so you actually can palpate all this stuff on someone's jugular notch. So you can palpate all this on somebody. And when you go off laterally to this, you'd be weird. What artery would I be palpating? The carotids. So these landmarks help you in your diagnostic workups when you're examining someone. So it's good to know the landmarks. So that's why we're showing you that pretty neck. So now we go and look at it. Looks just like the big blue model in the lab, doesn't it? There it is. Okay, so, well, this larynx that we have a hyoid bone, it's like the oid face. Thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage. Well, the cricoid is the only one that makes a total ring. That's the base of support for the whole larynx. And you'll see when we show you the side. This is the one that makes a total ring, because this doesn't. This anchors to this. This is like a shield to protect, you know, in old terms, your voice box. Protects your vocal cords and stuff. They're behind it. So it's like a shield.
Is that the thing that flaps up against it, like the
No.
cigars?
Yeah, the glass.
Flapping things. So,
The
Now-
reverse thumb.
so the right, you have epiglottis. You'll see this in them. And what this does is, this is a stabilizer. So when you swallow, everybody take your finger and put it on your hands out. Swallow. Let it go up, right? Better go up. If not, there's a problem. If it's crooked, you have a problem here. Okay? So what's happening, this is the glottis, that's the epiglottis. This pulls up to that and closes off the airway when you swallow, so water and food go down your esophagus and not down the wrong tube. So you can't swallow and breathe in at the same time. If you think you can, we'll give you a drink and watch you perform for us. You want to try? You don't want to swallow a gallon of water?
Gallon?
Yeah.
Wait, so then what happens when, like, you take like a drink of water and it feels like it goes down
Because you took in a breath kind of
before?
you should have. So what's it, you got water on you? How did they get a sacrifice to calf? So if we look at it from the side,
A cow and a calf.
I was being nice. We have one more cartilage to add in there called the arachnoid cartilage. So we said we had the cricoid, which is like the base of foundation. We have the thyroid, which is the shield to protect, because thyroid means shield or door, right? Then we have the arachnoid cartilage. You notice we have arachnoid muscle. Well, this muscle actually will pivot this cartilage, and this is what controls your vocal cords. The opening, closing, tightening, loosening. Okay? So it actually controls your ability to talk. And the nerve that would run in here would be called the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Recurrent laryngeal nerve, which comes from a branch off the vagus. So the vagus is very important. So you're controlling your vocal cords. Okay, you get the true vocal cord. See, it's on the true vocal cord. You have the fold above it to protect the cord. And then from below it, we get to the trachea. So below it is the trachea. So that is your larynx area. So the posterior aspect in the larynx area, you get behind it, is your esophagus. And when we do GI tract, we do esophagus side down. But even when we're doing respiratory today, we're not going to worry about the esophagus. And there's like, you know what's the real cause moving little big. So now we go to your friend and mine, the trachea. Ready? Amazing, isn't it?
Very horrible F on your radio teacher from him at the end.
Oh, I got look at how you got how recommendation. It goes two ways, you know. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street.
Black man.
I don't get rated this semester. I get full-time, I get rated in the fall. So I can be mean all I want. I can be mean all I want to you. Okay, so the go down to this view right here to look at the top. So the trachea itself is like the connecting way between the lungs and the larynx. Okay, it's like a connecting tube. I'm going to go back to the other picture. When we look at it, it starts roughly, the top of the trachea roughly is around C6. And it ends at T4. That's where it bifurcates. So C6 to T4, if you were from the back. So right dead center in the front here, what would be lying here in the anterior? No, sternum. I mean, outside the body. Outside the body. You helpless creature. So you're right here, right? So if you go through the sternal angle, we said the sternal angle is at the same level of T4, right? Remember that from, I don't know, a month ago? ago, I know it's a long time ago. We're gonna be remember this stuff like a year and a half from now on your rotations. But right here, so at that sternal angle is where your bifurcation's taking place. And if you went straight through with a stick, you'd be at T4. When we went over this stuff, when we did the sternum, so right where the manubrium is going to meet the body, there it is. There you are. So that's what we want to show you. So let me come back to this out when we get into the bronchi. But let's go back up. Looks like a toilet seat, doesn't it? So the trachea itself is made up of C-shaped hyaline cartilaginous rings. C-shaped. Why isn't it a complete circle? She says muscle.
Because the esophagus is right behind it.
Exactly. So think of this one into a circle. Look. What happened to my esophagus? Would it be compromised? Yes. Every time you swallow anything, it would get stuck there.
And you chose
Then you'd have to sort of plunge it out. Hydro. Yeah, hydrocon. You right there. Hydro. It's made of water. Water cartilage.
We enforce that. Trying to give her back grade and watch
Reinforce them back in the 80s. Okay, so he made a point. So back here we have a muscle known as the trachealis muscle. So it's not a total ring. And right behind is your esophagus. So when you swallow, the esophagus, something going down, can expand into here if it has to, so it can get down. So you don't choke. Okay? So the food can get down. The trachealis muscle also have a function. If something went in there, it contracts and pushes it out. When you cough, it contracts. And it puts out a lot of force. Also, look what it's lined with. Cilia. So it's pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. It's the only place in the body you really find it, in abundance. It's your trachea. Remember that? Remember that back in the first lecture? No. Back in January? No. Pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. And what is cilia there for? It moves things, right. So it can move particles in or out, mucus and so forth. It makes some people silly, like David. There's a lot of cilia. And what happens when you smoke? It destroys it. So you make a nice asphalt pathway for things to get down in your lung easy. That's why they suffer so much with bronchitis, chronic bronchitis, or slowly will eventually lead to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or emphysema. There you go. They're destroying all that. So it's worth smoking, right? How's it all do it? So that's the trachea. The last tracheal segment, as we come down, here, this nice big blow-up, is known as the carina. The carina. The last tracheal segment. Not carina, carina. Carina. For those who are interested. They're not interested in this study. So let's look at it. Huh? Let's look at it. Right here. It's the last tracheal segment of bifurcation. Looks like underpants. Does it look like underpants? I don't know. We don't wear any. He wears a gown. So, then from there we're going to bifurcate into our bronchi. So this is all conducting. This is pipe work, conducting zone. What does it do? Just bring an air down into the lungs. The business zone of the lung would be the respiratory zone, which is your alveoli, which we'll get into. That's where your gas exchange takes place. But here, we're just bringing ductwork slowly getting smaller and smaller, getting down into the deep parts of the lung. So on each side we have your main or primary bronchus, or bronchi, right and left. And they're totally symmetrical, correct? No. Why says no? People are so rude. Why?
It's a little hard.
He's very upset. He's very upset because he wanted to answer the question and you answered it. Because of the heart. We have to get over the heart. So as we come across, this one here is more horizontal. So this is, the left one would be described as longer, narrower, more horizontal. And the right would be described as shorter, wider, more vertical. So they would always believe that, well, more mucus would fall in this one than this one, so this one's more prone to bronchitis than that one. That's not true. It's 50-50. 50-50. This here, so then from here, we go into our secondary bronchi. Okay, secondary. So why do we have secondary? Well, we have to. 1, 2, and 3. Why do we have to have these 1, 2, and 3? You have 3 lobes here, 2 lobes here. So it's just smaller piping. That would be the main bronchi, and this would be a secondary bronchi coming in here now, going to each room or each lobe. So you have 2 on the left, 3 on the right. Then eventually they're going to branch smaller into segmental bronchus, which would be your tertiary. After this point, you go to your bronchioles and then the alveolus. So these are still all cartilage. Okay, see, pay attention to what it looks like. It's all cartilage still. As we go along here, now we're at the terminal end, or respiratory zone, and we're at the terminal bronchioles, which are made primarily of smooth muscle. Right? There's a lot of smooth muscle, elastic cartilage, and smooth muscle. Why? Because this is where dilation and constriction takes place. So the dilation and constriction takes place just in front of the alveoli. So the alveoli are right here. Now why do we have these round looping branch things all over the place? Why are they shaped like that? What's that going to surface area? There you go, increased surface area. That's why we have them. So there's a lot of surface, and around each one of these would be a network of blood vessels, capillaries, to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. That's what's going to take place. But here's where your like bronchial affects this. Okay, so they get inflamed, they constrict up. But they're inflamed from whatever's aggravating. So if we go into our alveoli, they're showing you a nice network of blood vessels around it. Let's go deeper into the alveolus. And with the alveolus, we also have 2 types. Type 1 is the wall. So type 1 is where you have your gas exchange. Type 2 maintain the shape. They keep the alveoli from collapsing. And how do they do it? With this product called surfactant, which lowers tissue resistance. So surfactant. That surfactant's there to maintain the shape and allows water to pass through the wall and get out. So you don't build a fluid volume inside here. So it has a double function. Sure, you're going to be here next Friday. Well, next Friday.
I'm waiting for the next one. Good, that's what you have.
You got a girlfriend.
Yeah, I wish.
Good luck.
Alright, I'll see you
See you
Tuesday.
Tuesday, bud. It's right, he's not. No.
Please call me. I didn't know that was a sport.
Just like cheering, that was. It's like, you got a tiger. That's right, that's what I'm doing. I want to get that remark. Surfactant, anti-surfactant. Okay.
That's what they come into a freebie to make their looks.
You got it, but we're going to get to that. You just ruined the end of the story. It's like, who won the Superman versus Batman? If you say that, then you ruin it. Right? She just ruined the end of the story. But can it happen in an adult? Yes. And in an adult, it's known as what? Acute respiratory distress. distress syndrome. And can it happen in the adult? Yes. And what happens? You sneeze. No. What happens is the person picks up a virus or bacteria that destroys these cells, so you can't produce this anymore. And what happens? These collapse and the person suffocates to death. Is there any cure? No. There's no cure. Acute respiratory distress syndrome. We'll talk about respiratory distress syndrome, which is the neonatal problem. This here is the adult. The only thing that will save the person's life is a lung transplant.
So would they be in an iron lung?
They'd be on a, not what they use, I mean, would it be on respirator thing? No, not here. They'd be on a respirator. But, and to keep them alive until they could do it. And it would come on quickly on the, there was a case here in Rhode Island, about 4 years ago, she had to have a lung transplant, and they saved her life. She came down with this.
Will they ever the SBA exam?
Maybe. Maybe, David, maybe.
It'll be a David only question.
It'll be a David only question. He has the 2A test. You have type 2, he has 2A. Okay. So, it's an important thing. This is, when this is depleting itself too, the early signs would be pulmonary hypertension. Because you're pushing a lot of pressure against, there's a lot of pressure in the lung pushing back against the heart. So you can develop pulmonary hypertension, which can cause a lot of right-sided cardiac problems. Okay, so that's why pulmonary hypertension is so dangerous.
Wouldn't that go hand in hand with pulmonary edema?
No, because pulmonary edema can come from the left side of the family. You know, but this would be. It makes it so hard to teach putting in the front row, but no. So it's an important. Now, what she brought up before, a preemie. Well, last thing to really develop in the lungs, especially this, and the surfactant. When you give surfactant to a baby, a premature baby, it'll start forming its own. You give it to the adult, it doesn't do a thing. But in the preemie, the high pressure oxygen surfactant, will help the preemie's lung develop and start forming its own surfactant. So that's what they do.
So in an adult, it's called that.
Acute respiratory, in
So
a baby it's just respiratory, it's not acute.
All right.
They were born with this, respiratory distress. There's no acute on it. This would be the baby. This is the adult. Okay, there's a difference. But this you can treat, that you can't. Okay? So that's why it's so important, this surfactant thing, that you should know it exists. And you're going to play a big role in that in physiology, in respiratory physiology. You're going to know a lot more detail of the molecular, of what's happening there and why. I'll let you have fun in physiology with that. Okay, not only do you do this, you do this, and what's going through there, and why, how's it maintain shape, how's it lower the tissue resistance to maintain its shape. That's big, so I don't want to ruin the story. So now, we go to the lungs. The lungs sit in the pleural cavity, which is inside the thoracic cavity. And the space between the lungs is known as the pleural space.
Oh,
Between the
I know
lungs.
this epidural space. No.
The space between the lungs, right behind the sternum. Yes, who said it? Mediastinum? You did? Oh, mediastinum. She's a ventriloquist. Mediastinum. That's in the mediastinum you'd find the heart, which would be in the pericardial cavity. But we don't worry about that right now. So here, notice when we take this and blow it up, boom! There's your friends. Parietal pleura, right? Visceral pleura, and pleural cavity. Yes! Those tissues come back. The serosal membrane is now going to play a big role And when you looked inside the cath, now you paid attention with that shiny, sheeny look to the inside the rib cage area, you were looking at parietal pleura. And the shiny material over the lung was this visceral pleura. And where they come together, they make a space called the pleural space. Okay? And in that space, there's a fluid level, a viscous fluid. So the lungs don't get irritated. Because when it gets irritated, where do you come down with a condition called pleurisy? And if anybody's ever had that, they wish they would die each time they take a breath. It's like rubbing your lungs over sandpaper with each breath. So you don't have this nice viscous fluid, you get this nice pussy, purulent fluid in there because it's infected. And can you get a puncture that in space? But after you puncture that, this is a pressurized system, people. So if you puncture, what's going to happen? The lung deflates. Fluid can deflate it, air can deflate it. So you're going to have a pneumothorax, hemothorax. So that will deflate it, crush the lung in. So it's better. So when the rib like fractures and punctures it, the person usually collapse the lung on that side too. So it's nasty.
A collapsed lung is just like a puncture, right?
Yes. So they'll put a tube in there and draw and push air in and blow the lung back out and keep the tube in there until they know you're stable and they'll try to take the tube out. And when you do lobectomy, where they go in like cancer and cut out just a lobe, they keep a drainage tube there for a long time, for a couple of weeks before they pull it out. To make sure the excess fluid is out, and then they make sure this pleural cavity will keep itself inflated. So they pull out and they suture, and you're awake when they do it. And if you talk to anyone who's ever had it done, it's like they're dragging your lung out. It's so painful. So there's nasty things that go on, of course. But that's the significance of this pleural cavity, that it's maintaining the pressure. So as we go deeper into look at our lungs, we have the hilus of the lung. Well, the hilar region of the lung is this, the hilus. And we talked about that in lab, and we said the hilus of an organ is its root, where the organ grows out from, like buds out from. And there's two organs that do this. The lung is one, and the other one is the kidney. And in this hilar region is how things will enter and exit the lung. Such you'll have pulmonary artery, primary bronchi, pulmonary vein. And if you look at the left lung, it's in this order, just like that. And you will focus on the left lung as in lap, of the cat and of the sheep lung. And you see this. You'll see pulmonary artery, primary bronchi, pulmonary vein. So it was ABV in that order. So the left side, the right side is totally different order. We're not going to get into it. It's easy to stay with the left. So there you go. So you can see that. So this is my hilar region. On the left, you have 2 lobes. On the right, 3 lobes. When you look at the lung. So just keep looking. Here we go. Oh, pretty. There again, showing you the hilar region, the root of the lung. For those who don't believe me. So now we look here at this picture, and we have this thing called the mid-axillary line and rib 8. Well, mid-axillary line would be a line drawn from your armpit midpoint all the way down to rib 10. That's the mid-axillary line. Why is rib 8 so significant? Because that's where the lung field ends, at rib 8.
That's where you put a chest tube.
You put a chest tube right below that, because you can't damage the lung. And you keep it. Those open and close by themselves on here. And at that rib 8 level, that is known as the pleural recess. So that's where your lung field end at rib 8. 10 is where the pleural cavity ends. Because parietal pleura will continue all the way down. It's designed this way because you have room in case you get a fluid buildup. There's room for it that doesn't affect your respiration. And if they have to put a tube in like David said, you go in from here.
For the thorax.
Right. To re-inflate the lung, to drain it and re-inflate it. Right. And you're not damaging lung tissue because you're below it. So you have a little space in there to play with. So rib 8, pleural recess, lung field to end. Rib 10, pleural cavity ends. So there's your landmarks. Look at that. Look at the way it's like shaped. Because you get your heart pushing in, your cardiac indentation in the lung, pushing it over. So again, 2 on the left, 3 on the right, until we're covering everything here on lung. We are. Gas exchange, yes, good. Last thing we'll talk about today is the diseases in the diaphragm next week. Last thing to get into today then is how do we get air in and out of our lung?
By inspiration.
Mr. Know-it-all. Yes, look at you. David's done. So we're going to inspire, we're going to expire. So inspiration, first question thrown out there, number 1, on inspiration, is this an active process? To take the air, well, active doesn't mean I'm asking if it's automatic. Active versus inactive means, do I need energy for this to take place? Do I need this magic stuff?
No.
David says no. How many agree with David? So if David jumped off the top of the building, he'd go
No,
with him, right?
I didn't think it was no, I didn't.
That's not good that he's a know-it-all. He's a thinker, he's a know-it-all.
It's an old person.
What do you think, Tina?
I disagree with him.
She disagrees with you, David, and she's doing the video, so I think she knows that.
Hey, I just gave her 2 hours of stuff to add.
How about Ed?
I think we need energy.
You need energy to do it, right? So yes, even while you're sitting here right now, doing nothing. That's right, David, doing nothing. You're burning energy. Why? Because you have to make a pressure gradient. Right? Don't you have to make a pressure gradient? Yes. And a big thing you'll learn in physiology is Boyle's law. And what is Boyle's law? It's a volume versus pressure. Over pressure. So what happens? They're inversely proportional. Volume increases, pressure goes down. Volume decreases, pressure goes up. That's how your lungs work. That's how the chest cavity works. So if atmospheric pressure is 760 millimeters of mercury, what do I have to do inside my chest cavity? I'm going to increase my volume. How do I do it? I have to contract muscle energy. And what muscle is going to contract? External intercostals. And our friend, diaphragm, contract. When this contracts, it flattens down because it pulls against the central tendon. When this contract, it raises the rib cage up. What happens? Chest cavity gets bigger. Pressure goes down. So now the pressure goes from 760 to 757. And what that's going to do? Air can go in because there's no resistance. The laws of thermodynamics, right? Everything goes from a greater to a lesser force. Because if it's liquid, solid, or gas. There you go. It's just following the laws of thermodynamics. So we're going to go with, that's physics. You take physics, and some of you will, if you're going to pre-med, you'll take physics. Chemistry will get into this too, for chemical formulas to move themselves. Well, there you go. The air will now enter.
What does ATP stand for?
Adenosine triphosphate.
You guys said that was a crazy question.
It is a crazy question.
Why?
You'll get into it in physics.
Right.
Oh,
I'm not worried about it.
oh, okay.
That's why I just said 18.
That's why I did this.
And that's why I gave you this. So, no, that is a good question. Just busting your chops. Adenosine triphosphate. It goes from diphosphate to a triphosphate because it phosphorylates. Phosphorus goes around, and that takes sugar to do that. You break down the sugar, you make ATP. So for every glucose molecule you break, you make 32 to 36 ATP depending on where you are. It's going to go through glycolysis, the true cycle. This is respiration. Okay, this is true metabolic respiration in your cells, and that's going to go from glycolysis, Krebs cycle to electron transit. That total process will take you from one glucose molecule to 32 to 36 ATP depending on where the cell is. Okay, that's. In other words, when you look at ATP, ATP is like, you look at glucose as you went to the casino and you won $1,000 in chips. Are they worth $1,000? The answer is yes. But can you use that currency outside the casino? No. So you're going to convert it back to dollars and cents. So all you're doing is taking glucose, proteins, or fats and converting them into an energy source our bodies can burn. And our bodies like to burn ATP. So that's all you're doing. So that's all it is. It's an energy source, okay? That's all it is. So, then help you out with what it is? Okay. Well, I don't want you to be confused with physiology, actually, because they're going to just blow through this crap on you. Okay, so the air will enter the lung. So the bottom line is, it's an active process. In case you get asked on the test. 2, how about expiration at rest, like right now? Is it an active process? When you're sitting there right now, do you need energy to breathe out? What do you think, Tina?
I don't think so.
She don't think so. How about Lexi back there in the corner? She don't think so either. How about you there, Samantha, in the corner behind your computer? Steph, rather. Steph, I'm thinking of Sam, the tutor. Steph. No. She's right. No, right? No. Why? Well, here's the reason. Okay. Well, here's why. What happens when you stop, the air comes in and you're satisfied? These just relax. When they relax, what happens? It just goes back to normal size. So it's inactive. That means no ATP burnt. Why? Because the muscles just go back to rest. They relax. And it just goes back to normal size. So now this builds up to 763 millimeters of mercury, which is greater than atmospheric pressure. The air comes out. And that's how it works. So these things like this, that's for physiology. I'm not going to ask you that. I'm just showing you these numbers because you're going to get slammed with it. You'll see this a lot. I'll show it to you on the vascular stuff too, how it works, 25 to 10. That's how you figure out hypertension, why hypertension causes problems on the venous side versus the arterial side. I'll show you that when we get into the capillary, when we do blood vessels. But here, this is just showing you an example. I will ask you about what muscles would contract. Is it active? Is it inactive? So the third scenario then will be what? Expiration, inspiration/expiration under stress. Stress, meaning you're stressed out, exercising, whatever. You're pissed off, you're mad. Or just hyperventilating, you get angry, you're really mad. That's burning energy both ways. So we know inspiration is going to burn energy. So we already know that. So on the inspiration side, it's active. We know that. And we're using those two muscles. Now you're going to add the scalenes in there because you're going to bring in secondary muscles of respiration. So the scalenes would be brought in the innermost, the centered-most intercostal, which around the sternum would also add in. But I'm not going to go into that detail. Physiology does. But just remember, this is why when you're running, you start getting discomfort in here, because the scalenes are going to also grab onto the ribcage and pull it up more. Force it. So you're going to add even extra muscles in there. So we already knew this was active. So, but on expiration, why does it become active? because we want to get the air out quicker. We want to get the CO2 out of you faster. We want to get rid of this quicker, throw it out faster. So how we're going to do it? We're going to contract the muscles on the rib cage, such as the internal intercostals and innermost. That's their name, intercostals. And what they'll do is grab the rib cage and yank it down. They'll yank the rib cage down and push the air out quick. Also, the abdominal muscles, especially the rectus abdominis, also will contract and push up against the diaphragm and push the air out with more force too. So these will all take place. So now this becomes active. So when you do an exercise or you're stressed out, expiration becomes an active process. And this is why when you're not in good enough shape or you think you are, you're going to go run 3 miles today or 4 miles, and you get about a half a mile into it, and everything starts hurting over here, you're getting pain here, you're getting pain here. You think you're having a heart attack, you might be having a heart attack, but in general, it's muscles being used you're not used to using. They've never been stressed like this before. And guess what? They can't handle it. So they start to spasm out, they start building up like gases go up, and you start, oh my God, you're gasping for the air, right? And there you go. So on Wednesday, you have a quiz. We'll do the quiz, go over the quiz, then we will finish up respiratory system. It's pretty easy for that. It's just we talk about diaphragm and diseases of the lung and diaphragm, which is pretty quick. And that'll be it. And next Friday, there's no class because kumbaya day here is about. And then the following Wednesday, we'll